छोटों को प्यार, बड़ों को प्रणाम, namaskar, sat sri akal, adab. What I really mean is love and blessings to all my younger ones and respect to my elders. Today, at the current situation of COVID 19, a lot of negativity all around. So we thought, why not we talk to people who have the positive views of the situation and how to get out of it. Today, we have Mr. Ravi Lochan Singh, President for AAERI India. Ravi Lochan Singh from Global Reach, who has absolutely got the reach which is global. And you've been in the industry for quite a long time so far. Raviji, what do you think that nature has pressed the reset budget at the moment?
I think most parts of the world have actually managed to contain the virus quicker than what most modeling had predicted. I'm left with a lot of hope.
Do you think this is the dawn of the new world?
Well, it will be certainly a new world in the way we do things. It doesn't mean that it's a restart of the world, but it's just that we would customize, we would live to a new way of living. Who had thought that we would all be under house arrest for good about 2 months and still be smiling at the end of the day?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So the way I look at it, a lot of us have got used to now working from home, working from our mobile devices. And I think even our customers, even our students, people generally will get used to finding information without the necessity of walking into someone's office. And I think that's going to be a huge change.
That's right, that's right. How do you think the geopolitics will change in the coming times?
Well, I think it's going to favor the subcontinent. That's the way I look at it. In fact, there's a lot of news even today while we are talking about how there is a kind of a proxy war going on between Australia and the Western world and also China. I believe that China has in fact indicated that they may not encourage a trade with Australia for a period of time. Now, this is a very clear indication, Navneet, that things would change. And it's going to actually favor Australia Australia and India and the relationship with India in a very big way.
How soon do you see the vaccine emerging to deal with the COVID 19?
Once the vaccine is found, it's got to be tested for side effects. It will be tested across the world, and eventually it will be put on use. But before that, it will have to be produced in large numbers. And now this would mean, Navneet, we are looking at a good 12 to 18 months before we can take it for granted that we got a vaccine at hand.
Do you also believe that there is a conspiracy theory that it may have been a biological weapon?
I don't know. I mean, I think I see the same news that you do.
That's right.
And in fact, it may or may not be. In the end, what I would know is that the governments of all the countries, they're going to be very wise in the coming period. They'll be taking all kinds of precautions, and I think that's for our safety. Of course, all the budgets kept aside for the regular kind of defense budgets will have been of no use really, because people have found easier way to attack each other. Now, whether it is a biological weapon or it's not, that's irrelevant, actually, in my opinion. What matters is that the world is going to be more prepared in the coming years.
I agree. What do you think? What will be the state of economics once the lockdown ends, which will be probably a month or two?
Or the technology? Well, the technology is going to be an integral part of our work. I think there is two ways of looking at it. Does technology replace our work, or technology works like an enabler? And I think it's going to be more of an enabler than replacing our work. A lot of people talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning and things like that. How long do you really want to talk to a bot and things like that? I mean, in the end, you do want to talk to a human being.
Absolutely.
Today, look at it. New Zealand has lifted its restrictions or brought it down to 3, and there's been queues outside McDonald's this morning. And it's like the idea is people do want to meet people. People want to go out. And I think machine and technology can only be an enabler than a replacer, but technology is definitely there for good.
And what about the state of economics when the lockdown ends?
Oh, yeah, there'll be a couple of years of downturn. There is two ways of looking at it. I mean, I always look at 2008 as a reference point when the world experienced another kind of a recession. Now, certain industries gained from it, certain industries didn't. And of course, that's the reality even this time. You've got pharmaceutical, agri-products, agriculture, retail, which will continue to do well. Health, hospitals, research and development funds will be increased. Defense budgets might come down. Biosecurity and things like that will go up. But at the same time, the interesting part is education. And this is where I pitch in. Normally, I've seen that the education tends to go up when the economy doesn't do well. There's actually proper studies to show that, because when people lose jobs, or if they find that their current jobs is leading to redundancy, they would go back to the university to gain skills. And this is what's happening around the world. The migration too is linked to it. Why do we see migration happening from countries like India or Nepal or other countries in South Asia? Because there have not been enough jobs. So in a way, migration, international studies, international travel for study, these things are inversely related to economy. If, let's say, there were quite a few jobs, why would people travel? That's the basic logic.
The international students market and the travel and tourism, these are the two that have been hit very, very badly due to this COVID-19. How would we react to it, or come back to bring back to the situation what we were there 3 months ago?
I think there is a pipeline of students who want to come even right now. The issue is not as much about students traveling. Yes, there will be a little bit of a dampener. It is all linked to when the borders open. The aviation sector is obviously down, and so is education. And there's been a disruption. School results are delayed. Universities have not completed the exams. So, of course, those are technical barriers which will come into play for the next maybe 12 months, 6 to 12 months. But in the end, there is a pipeline of students who want to study. Now the question comes in, when do the countries allow the students to travel over and study? Now, this is the, I can say, billion-dollar question. I stop saying million-dollar question.
Absolutely.
Because the trade is worth billions. And this is where the economy comes in. Why I'm saying students more than any other categories of travelers, of course, students and possibly work permit holders and maybe a couple of business travelers, is because the students, before they travel in, they almost always undertake a medical checkup.
Absolutely.
This is a done thing. I mean, schools students are required to take a medical test about a couple of months before, maybe a month before they travel. What is required to be taken in those tests is also determined by the visa granting country. The doctors and the medical centers are impaneled by the countries which are giving the visas, and those tests have always had changes. Currently, students take tests for tuberculosis, sometimes they have an X-ray and things like that. And if you really think of it, there are a number of illnesses and diseases and even viruses all over the world which don't exist in Australia or New Zealand. How do these countries really guard against them? Have we waited for smallpox to be eradicated before we allowed people to come in? Did we wait for tuberculosis to be eradicated in India before we allowed people to come in? No, we didn't. We simply took precautions. What were the precautions? We got the students tested for those illnesses. If they were tested positive, they took medicines, they cured themselves, and then they tested negative again, and then they traveled over. And that's exactly the formula that the countries will have to employ. They can't be waiting for a vaccine which is elusive. And so what is the most important part is that this is something which we have started talking to the government about now. I, in my role with AAERI, have been lobbying for it. And in fact, most see sense in it. Once that is put into place, I expect the borders to open maybe in the next 5 to 6 months, and maybe even earlier. And who knows how the government would want to play with the World Cup cricket happening in October, November. That's a huge, it's not been cancelled yet. We don't even know whether it will be empty stadiums or whether they will still allow some to travel over. We don't know those things. And so we'll wait and see what happens in the next couple of months.
You know, as you said, international students do pay and contribute a lot to the economy here in Australia, at least. The other option is to don't open up the borders quickly. They may have an option to study online for probably one semester and then come and continue with the second, third, fourth semester from there on. Right. So what I understand is, yes, medical checkup is already there. There can be additional condition that can come up, saying that isolation for a certain period of time. Go and get yourself checked. If it is negative, they are allowed to go back to the universities and start. With the online options coming up, how viable do you think it would be picked up by the students overseas?
See, I mean, Navneet, you've got to understand a couple of things. I think there are a couple of terms being thrown around.
That's right.
Yesterday, I used the word online on my blog, and somebody came back from the university sector and said, "Oh, we are not online delivery, we are doing remote delivery." Now, then I started to understand what does remote delivery means and how it differs to online. Because
That's
technically, university courses are not designed for online delivery.
That's right.
Because online delivery is a completely different format altogether.
Yep.
So what the universities are trying to do is they are trying to deliver the program remotely. And honestly, they started by offering it only for a remaining portion of the first semester. There was no plan to offer it for the second semester. Now we are faced with a dilemma that if the borders are not opening, how can the students start? So this is where some universities have come up with this option, and they are already talking to the students that the students can actually start by studying remotely for their first semester and then come in and study for the second semester onwards on the campus. Now that brought in two other questions. First, in India, or I'm talking with Indian context, but it can apply to any country, a student doesn't differentiate between a remote learning and online learning. Okay. Secondly, a lot of our students come from middle income and even lower middle income backgrounds who may not have the facility, the infrastructure to actually undertake the program the way the university desire them to take. They've lived only on a mobile phone for most of their life. Here we need proper audio equipment, audiovisual equipment. Third thing, the universities have not really offered the right price for the program.
That's right.
Most of these universities are going out and saying, "Oh, yeah, you can study remotely," and then you go back and say, "Oh, will it cost me less?" He said, "No, it'll still cost you $15,000 for 6 months." Now, this is my question, Ravneet. Which Indian student is paying $15,000 for one semester of study in India, even if it is only for 6 months, when, firstly, the visas has not been granted? Yes, the visa would come through. Let's assume. But let's say 10% or 20% of the students who undertake the 6 months of study still don't get the visa thereafter. What is this course worth? $15,000 gone. People like you and me will be stuck answering the questions of the parents and the student.
That's right.
Second question, the government will have to answer this, and they're actually working on it. Will the time spent outside of Australia be counted for post-study work or the 485 visa? Now, we are expecting a clarification this week from the government, and it is likely that they might say, okay, but I really don't know where in legislation it will fall in, because firstly, the student doesn't hold a visa yet. And we all know that any legislation change can only be implemented once the parliament has passed it and the minister has signed it. Right now, there's no sitting of the parliament. That I don't know when it will be passed. How can we take it for granted that the student studies in, say, July, comes to study in March or next year for the second semester? The period between July and March, which is 8 months of calendar year, is counted for post-study work. Let's say for some reason he can't come in March and he comes in July. Will the full 1 year be counted under post-study work? We don't have these answers. We hope that there will be an answer. We hope that the government would have come up with an answer immediately. So if we can get the price fixed, and if we can get the government legislation fixed, I'm very sure that there would be a market for it. Students can undertake possibly the English program or a pathway program or some portion of the program which is economically offered. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Some of the institutes, I was going through the emails yesterday itself, that they are offering a lesser fees or a one subject not to be paid out of the 4 subjects by reducing the fees to 25%, paying for 3, doing 4 subjects. But how many institutes would be doing that? That's another question.
Let me tell you, Navneet, many would offer a 25% discounting or a scholarship. Come on, yeah, their facilities are not being used here.
That's right.
I asked the same question to one of the director international and said, no, it's a remote learning. We will even do the orientation online.
I think.
Now, my question is, it doesn't make sense. Now, the other thing is, if you ask me, 25% discount is also very low. Actually, we should be offering the entire course of the first semester at 25%. You know why I say this? We should think of it that we are engaging the student. The student is anyway going to arrive on your campus the next semester. You are creating a pipeline for your institution. We should be thinking of it almost the way Gillette sells its blades and the razor. We should think of it like a razor. Once you've sold the razor, the blades will come automatically, which is in the second semester.
If any of the university representative or the high ups are listening to this, listen to what Mr. Ravi Lochan Singh has to say, that offer one semester free for studies. I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. Having been in the industry for over 20 years, 28 years, you know the games from both sides of the table. And yes, you are probably one of those crucial people who will lobby for international students to safeguard international students' side of it. Finally, do you think the world will be same after this COVID-19 is over?
Navneet, we have seen a couple of low patches in our trade. And I'll tell you, the first I remember was in 1999 to 2001. Right. And once the 9/11 happened in 2001, people said the world would change and there would be a completely new world order. Let me tell you, our biggest intake was in 2002, 2003. And between 2003 and 2008, there were record numbers of international students who came to Australia. After 2000, after all the attacks, reported attacks on Indian students in Melbourne and Sydney in 2010, 9 and 10, we said, oh, what's happening? Nobody's going to ever come to Australia. And Australia was deemed a racist country by certain sections of the media. Between 2011 and 2018, we've seen a huge upsurge. What I'm coming back to it is, these are parts of life. And I always look at it in a different way. And Navneet, you've been very generous with your comments about me. I look at it in a way that we got to accept certain things. Things which we can't change, we accept it. But the things that we can change, we make efforts to change. So here in this kind of a situation, we have to accept what has been implemented. We can say there was an overreaction, or some might come up with a Swedish kind of a model. And these are great discussions to happen. But what's most important is we have to accept it.
I agree. I normally tell the students, you have to go and pick up one of the best options out of the ones that are available. So exactly that's what you said. We have to be positive on that. Before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Ravi Lochan Singh. It has been absolute pleasure and privilege for me to be talking to you. Just for the information, it has been 25 years for me being in this industry.
There you go. There you go. And that's why I said right in the very beginning, Navneet, you've been around and you've had a 360 degrees perspective, having operated from Australia, and it's fantastic. So all the best to you. Stay safe, Navneet. And as you can make out, I'm sitting very much at my dining table and having this chat with you. Have a great time, and hopefully we'll catch a cup of coffee in a restaurant soon.
Absolutely. And before I wrap up, one final message for all the international students to stay positive coming from you, please.
Yep, certainly. It's just wait. And in fact, in many ways, I would say that every problem leads to an opportunity. I think there will be an opportunity very soon. If Australia does go back to becoming more self-reliant and starts to build on its own manufacturing and industries happening, wait for it. You're going to see a lot more skilled migration happen. Who's going to run the factories? We'll need more engineers. We'll need IT. We'll need project people, a whole lot of it. And I think good times are just around the corner. Look out for it.
Lovely. Thank you so much. So आज हमने की Mr. Ravi Lochan से बातचीत और मैं आपका नवनीत. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
One-stop answer to your Australian education and visa matters. GEMCO Sydney. Dream big, achieve big.